Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, greetings. As we get into this article, I have a real and serious question for you, in particular, if you claim yourself to be an American. At what point have we, the United States of America, declared war or been attacked by Russia? This early morning vote to steal more from the American people should be an incentive to vote out those who voted to pass it. I walk around my community, as many of you do the same each and every day, each and every week. You, like me, observe decay on almost every block, except those near City Hall and along the busiest of traffic routes. There are some other areas that aren't too blighted, but those that are, well, the percentage is too high. I see sidewalks that are upended, making them unusable. Not just an inconvenience for one using a hand truck, but unsafe for those who have even marginal issues walking. Intersections and streets filled with enough water that one could bathe if they were so inclined to such a public display of a questionable quality liquid. Our water's so thoroughly tainted that my tap water registers at near 200 parts per million contaminants whenever I test it. I've been assured by the assistant city manager that the state is actively sampling the water from pre-selected points in the city to ensure that it is worthy of consumption. Recently, the city council threatened its voters with increased fees and taxes should they insist on maintaining their local police department. I share with you these as I have no doubt your community is also struggling. And what is the result of your struggle and suffering? Being mocked by elitist senatorial snobs, calling us names, impugning our character, and threatening to send our sons and daughters to a war which we've not any reason for involvement. For what reason are they voting to send yet another $95 billion when they've demonstrated that one, they don't care that things are deteriorating at home, and two, we're not at war? What is the truth of what this money is actually being used for? I think we all have our own suspicions, and I think we would probably find out that we are probably very, very nightmarishly right. 13 February 2024, U.S. Senate approves a $95 billion aid for Ukraine and Israel in pre-dawn vote. House Speaker Mike Johnson appears to be obeying Donald Trump's command not to allow the bill to receive a vote in the lower chamber. By Eric Garcia, Andrew Feinberg, The Independent. The Senate overwhelmingly passed a legislative package to provide aid to Ukraine, Israel, and allies in the Indo-Pacific, but it faces additional hurdles as House Speaker Mike Johnson announced he would not put the bill to the floor. Only 29 senators, 26 Republicans, plus 3 Democrats voted against the bill, with 70 senators, including 22 from the GOP, voting in favor. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky led the charge against the $95.34 billion package as a host of Republican senators spoke on the floor late into the night on Monday evening and into Tuesday morning. The legislation came after Senate Republicans rejected a larger package that would have included additional provisions to restrict immigration and increase security at the U.S. Mexico border. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, Independent Senator Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, and Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma negotiated the agreement that the House and many Republicans opposed as insufficient. The package includes $60.6 billion in aid to Ukraine, $14.1 billion in aid to Israel to assist with its war against Hamas after the 7 October attack. $2.44 billion for U.S. Central Command to address combat expenditures for conflict in the Red Sea, $9.15 billion in humanitarian assistance to Ukraine and Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, and $4.83 billion to support regional partners in the Indo-Pacific to push back against the People's Republic of China. Steward Joe Biden hailed the Senate action in a statement on Tuesday, calling the legislation critical to advancing America's national security interests. I applaud the bipartisan coalition of senators who came together to advance this agreement, and I urge the House to move on this with urgency. We cannot afford to wait any longer, he said, adding that the costs of inaction in places such as Ukraine are rising every day, with Ukrainian forces reportedly running out of ammunition in the face of renewed Russian attacks. If we do not stand against tyrants who seek to conquer or carve out their territory, the consequences for America will be significant, he said. At a press conference held just hours after the early morning vote, Senate Majority Leader Chuckie Schumer called the legislation
one of the most historic and consequential bills
to have passed the upper chamber and said it
greatly impacts not just our national security, not just the security of our allies, but also the security of Western democracy as we know it.
Mr. Schumer said the strong bipartisan vote in the Senate indicates that the legislation would easily garner a similarly bipartisan measure of support in the House should House Speaker Johnson allow it to receive an up or down vote on the floor of his chamber. But Mr. Johnson, following the lead of former President Donald Trump, who himself has called for the U.S. to end aid to Ukraine, released a statement announcing that he would not bring the bill to the floor even as the Senate debated the legislation. Now, in the absence of having received any single border policy change from the Senate, the House will have to continue to work on its own will on these important matters, he said. America deserves better than the Senate's status quo. The remarks come after Senate Republicans have drawn out the process for passing the aid package throughout the weekend. Mr. Paul, a vocal opponent of Ukraine aid and a close ally of Mr. Trump, praised the House Speaker for holding the line against helping Kiev defend against Russia's invading force. I think that's very supportive, he told The Independent, and I think our filibuster helped to slow things down. During his speech on the floor, Mr. Paul spoke about alleged corruption in Ukraine as a reason to halt aid to the U.S. ally. But earlier in the night, Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, who initially took part in the negotiations with the bipartisan immigration foreign aid bill before he voted against it, criticized the Kentucky senator and others who've stood in the way of more defense assistance passing the Congress.
A lot of people, when they hear a senator speak, they believe that it's the truth,
he told The Independent.
They've heard somebody say that if we pass this bill, then we're all gonna go right to Kiev with buckets full of money and let oligarchs buy yachts. I wonder how the spouses of the estimated 25,000 soldiers in Ukraine who have died feel about that.
Senator John Cornyn of Texas said that he hoped that the House will take up their own bill. And work its will, and that's the way the system is supposed to. Other senators took alternative routes. At one point, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, one of the most ardent opponents of aid to Ukraine, joined an ex-Twitter space with the site's owner, Elon Musk, who has criticized U.S. support for Ukraine. It's important that the American public has a different perspective than what's being shoveled out by people in support of this package and the mainstream media, Mr. Johnson said. Mr. Johnson added that he did not think Ukraine could win the war against Russian President Vladimir Putin. I've been making the point that Putin will not lose his war because it's existential to Putin, Mr. Johnson said. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio also praised Mr. Musk's outspokenness. I think it's just one more sign to the American people, and he's obviously an important American. They think this bill is a bad deal for the country, Mr. Vance said. But Mr. Tillis rebuked Republicans and said that American efforts helped degrade Russia. Putin is losing this war, folks, Mr. Tillis said on the floor. This is not a stalemate. This guy is on life support. The push comes as Mr. Trump vocally opposed the original bipartisan immigration foreign aid agreement, effectively killing it. During the weekend, Mr. Trump spoke at a rally in South Carolina where he recalled that he spoke to a NATO member state leader about the fact it had not lived up to its obligations and would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. But some Republicans excoriated their colleagues for opposing aid to Ukraine. I know, I know the shock jocks and online instigators have riled up many in the far reaches of my party, Senator Mitt Romney of Utah said in a floor speech. But if your position is being cheered by Vladimir Putin, it's time to reconsider your position. Mr. Murphy, the Democrat senator who negotiated the initial bipartisan agreement, criticized Republicans for drawing out the process, but he said the agreement would finally go to a vote.
I'm sad it took this long to get it done. Don't really understand what the House's position is right now,
he said.
But it's good that this is going to get a big bipartisan vote, and we'll cross our fingers that the House comes to its senses.
Ms. Sinema, for her part, was more direct when asked what she thought about Mr. Johnson saying he would oppose the legislation unless it included border security when he opposed the initial bill.
Build a time machine,
she told The Independent as she walked toward Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's office. It's important to remember, number one, as I stated earlier, they don't care about the deterioration going on here in the United States of America. Number two, we're not at war. So when these elected individuals go up there and do the, oh, boo-hoo, I wonder how the spouses would feel, it sucks. End of story. It sucks. We have no business prolonging this engagement by financing it in the billions and the hundreds of billions of dollars which we have allowed these elected individuals to prolong this nightmare. And obviously, they don't even take it seriously themselves when you have an elected senator being flippant about just build a time machine. Oh, that'll fix the problem. Anyway, so these false emotional appeals that are designed poorly to tug at your heartstrings, don't fall for it. Thank you for your time.